How you doing? You alright?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, yeah. Good as you can be.
Good. I appreciate that, mate. Thank you for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you because I know you've got a lot going on. And I just thought it'd be really appreciative to just to talk to you, man, just to know what's going on. I'll be honest
Oh,
with you, man. I'll be honest with you. I can't keep up with you, bro. Seriously, the stuff. Do you know what? I can't keep up, mate. Honestly, the amount of stuff I've had to sift through just to find out about you is just absolutely ridiculous. And that's a testament to you first and foremost.
thank you. Yeah, just trying to keep busy.
No, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I just want to ask you first and foremost, like, how you doing, man? Like, difficult times right now, especially for a musician, DJ, producer. Like, it's crap. It's not ideal. But how are you, like, overall dealing with the whole kind of pandemic from a
Um,
personal and musical perspective?
there's a lot of things that I maybe used to take for granted that I miss a lot. Like I always know how much I used to enjoy gigging, that kind of thing. Um, so I miss that a lot. Um, but beyond that, I've adapted now. I think I've kind of got used to the fact that gigs aren't going to be there. So where that's gone, I've just tried to get busy into doing other stuff. So like my day to day has changed a lot, I guess, in the last year. In that, um, I feel like I'm always working, or I'm always looking for ways to make little bits of money here and there. Explore new ways to perform or like connect with supporters and make new fans, and just stay active but stay visible at the same time. So it's been quite tiring because I've been non-stop for like a year. I don't think I've ever really had to work quite as hard as this. It sounds mad, but like it is a graft working in the industry. But I think that the the level of work has been taken up at quite a rate in the last year.
It,
So it's taken a while to get into the groove really of the level of work that's involved now, just to like you know try and make the money, keep paying the bills, all that kind of thing.
it,
But like on a personal level, I think it's been testing a little bit. It's quite sad. I've got two kids at home, 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So having them indoors every day, trying to keep them engaged with schoolwork on top of everything else, has been probably the toughest thing. Think that like my family, we're doing well through it. We've had a few bits and bobs happen in my personal life as well, like family life that come unexpectedly last year, that kind of rocked a lot as well. So um, yeah, we've pulled through a lot of bits together as a unit, and on the whole, I'm good. I'm in a good spot at the minute, I think.
no, that's good to hear. I mean, if anything, it sounds like from when you mentioned previously regarding how you've had to work extra hard, if anything, it sounds like that's benefited you massively. Not from I'm not just saying purely from a financial perspective, but from from engaging with your followers and gaining new fans and things like that, and keeping yourself busy has also helped you mentally as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it. I wish a little bit that I had a bit more time to spend with the family, but I feel like I've worked myself into a position now where, especially with things like Twitch and streaming 3 times a week, which is something that, I used to struggle. It got to the point where I struggled doing radio once a week. Now I'm streaming 3 nights a week. It's like that has become, because I think at the time when I took that on, um, some of my jobs that I'm involved in were not happening. Like companies were putting people on furlough,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
freelance work dried up at the beginning. I was like, right, well, I've got a month out at least. At the time, we didn't know how long we was going to be locked down for, so I was just thinking, well, I got a few weeks. Why don't I like get on this streaming
Yeah,
thing?
because this will blow over by then, and you'll be able to go crack on and get back to normal. But obviously,
Exactly. But then it carried on and carried on, and now it's like I'm double busy, but I've also got that to maintain. But a part of me feels like I have to maintain it because that's the point. That's how that world works. If you don't engage with it regularly with people who like subscribe to your channel or like donate or do whatever they do, or even just like there's this, you feel like you owe it to the community that turn up for the streams as well, because there's at least like 50 people that turn up without fail every time I stream,
That's
and I feel
crazy.
like I owe it to them at least just to like show up. And
I mean, in a way, that's a bit of pressure, right? I'm assuming that's a not a bit. That's actually quite a considerable amount of pressure to maintain your status, maintain your material, as well as balancing personal and then your music and etc. etc. And but then in the back of your mind, and say, if I don't maintain this, then where's that going to take me? Because we don't know how long lockdown's going to be on for. And we just got this level of uncertainty and ambiguity of where do we go from here.
I think for now it's just like I just have to keep plowing through it unless it gets to the point where it's causing problems in my home life. Like if my family are struggling because I'm like constantly busy, or I'm not spending enough time with my kids or my wife, then it might be like, do you know what, I'm just the first thing that we'll have to slow down will be the streaming. Like that's somewhere where I will have to maybe like juggle it a bit, because family always has to come first anyway.
Amen. 100%.
But I also recognise the importance of continuing that streaming, because it's built up nicely in a year, and it's a slow build. A lot of people like expect the world from getting into the I'm going to jump in this streaming thing, and if it don't like blow up for them in the first like 3 or 4 weeks,
Give up.
they're kind
That's
of
it.
bored of it. It's like, oh, it is hard work, like going on there 2 3 times a week can be quite hard work, thinking of ways to be interesting, or like switching up, like make more people intrigued to come and check it out again, or people that maybe haven't checked it out for a while. It's like you can't just go on there and do a DJ mix 3 times a
Oh,
week. Like no one's turning up 3 nights a week to watch you do that, because you're going to end up playing the same tunes every few
over and
days.
over again.
It's like no one needs to hear you do a DJ mix 3 times a week. Even once a week is like is more than enough in most DJs' cases, right? So the thinking of that, keeping it up and keeping it moving, keeping the audience engaged, all them kind of things that you have to do. Like in your head, you think, oh, like, I'll just turn the stream on, stream for a couple of hours, and that's it. But you're thinking about it all week. It kind of lives with you all the time, and so it is quite a lot of work. And obviously, money wise, it's not loads of money that comes back in, but there is potential for it to become really good earner. You just got to stick it out for, if you look at all these Twitch streamers that earn dough, they're on Twitch 3 4 nights a week, but they're on for hours at a time, and but they build up to that position where you reach that tipping point with anything you do financially or in work, where it starts off as a hobby, like in music, starts off as a hobby, and it gets to that point where it's like, this is earning all right now. If I
Mm.
stop this other thing I'm doing and put that time into this could kick on to like full time work. And that's what Twitch is like, what's to say like in 3 years if I'm still doing this and I've got like 500 600 subscribers a month, that's bringing in 1,200 quid a month. And
That's
then I
crazy.
think, well, like if I stop doing that and put the extra time into this and be on every day, how many subs am I going to have in 6 months' time? And then it's like, well, in 6 months' time, if you do that and really like knuckle down and get on with it, it might be a full time wage coming in just through streaming on Twitch every day.
So you've done this for just about a year, then? You saying?
I mean, I've been in the streaming realm for like years before this, but
Twitch then?
I wasn't streaming regular. It wasn't like I had a schedule. I would just pop on, maybe do a mix on Facebook or a mix on Twitch or something, like. And before that, for a little while, I was doing this VR thing that was streaming out on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a weekly, like a scheduled show, I'd say yeah, like a year in March was when
I was
I
gonna
started
say
the
because
lockdown.
you've got about what, about 4,500 followers on Twitch. I
I'd have
think.
to look. It probably
Yeah,
is. No, it's over. It went over 4,000 recently, so it's
yeah, 4,400 or something around that. I mean, mate, fair play
over
to you.
four. I'm not someone who looks at the figures as often as a lot of people would expect, but
Hmm.
I know it's over 4,000. But if it's as much as 4,400, that's actually more than I thought I had. So that's pretty
No,
decent.
fair play to you, mate. Fair play to you. Mate, off topic, only because I found this from looking into you. What the hell is Saware?
So rare.
Is it so rare,
So
mate?
rare a football game. So it's like fantasy football. If you play like fantasy Premier League,
Mate, I do. Mate, even I'm Champions League, Championship Manager 97, 98 days. So when I saw that, I was like, what the hell is that?
right? So that is just a game I play. It's built on like cryptocurrency.
Mm,
So, but it is essentially just like if you take if you stop don't think about crypto for a minute because that's just the on ramp to it. But what it is it's like a collector's cards if you like. I can go mad deep into it, but at the base level, it's a game you play where you can buy and sell players, but there's only a certain amount of each player in the game. So those players are like collectible cards that you can play in the game. So
right.
you basically set up a five-a-side team each week in different divisions. So there's like an all-star division, which is players from any league in the world. You got championship Europe champions division, which is players only from like the French, Spanish, Italian, and English leagues.
Yeah.
Then you've got like the Challenger Europe, which is like your Eredivisie, your Belgian league, like Turkish league, Russian league, all them. And then you've got like the Asian divisions when that opens up the J League and all that kind
A-League,
of.
isn't it? Mm.
So it's basically like a card game where there's like an auction that is always ongoing of cards of players, like, and each player only has 100 base rate cards per season, 10 rare cards, and one unique card. And the unique card gives you a 50% bonus on their score every week. The the super rare cards give you a 25% bonus, and the regular rare cards give you a 5% bonus on their score. So then in the game week, based off like their performance in like the Opta,
Yeah.
so every touch they get, every pass they make, every
Jesus.
tackle, it's really it's like a proper in depth um, fantasy league. But you have
So,
to buy the cards, so you have to do a bit of digging about trying to find like the bargain players that are going to perform. So like trying to dig around the Belgian league for some kid who's just like he came off the bench last week, he scored pretty well. You know that player's injured next week, so he might get 90 minutes. Like get that card now
yeah.
for like 30 quid, and in 5 weeks' time it might be worth 200.
I
Like
was going to
so
say, this looks like a massive return on them, man. I was thinking people earn
yeah.
thousands.
I mean, some of the cards are really expensive and will maybe might just hold their value, but other ones you can pick up like players in the J League while it's in the off season. You can pick up a decent few players in J League, and then it starts in a couple of weeks' time. And when those cards start scoring, people are going to be like, "Oh, I need a goalkeeper for my like global team," and
Yeah.
those goalkeepers that you picked up for 40, 50 quid are now worth 500 or something. Like it's
That is
mad.
mental. Well, it's only when I came across your page, like, what the hell is that, man? And it's
Yeah.
massive
Well,
following.
I like I'm interested in that crypto sphere. So my mate got into it because he was on that football index,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's been trying to get me on football index for ages. And I was like, yeah, not sure if I've got the time for it. And then he's like, mate, have you seen this so rare thing? And I was like, what is it? I had a little look at it. I was like, oh, I'm not sure, but I was holding some Ethereum anyway in a wallet, and I thought, so if I put it in there, it's like holding it in football cards instead of just in a
Just,
crypto wallet.
yeah.
I thought, I may as well just buy some of these cards with the Ethereum that's just sat in my wallet. So I bought a few cards, and then I was like, I won a few cards in the game week, and you win Ethereum each week if you score over a certain amount of points. And so,
Oh,
like, it's quite easy to at least win about 20, 30 quid's worth of Ethereum every week as a standard. And then if you win the cards, depending on what card you win, some of them cards are worth like 400, 500 quid.
yeah, I saw, man. Some people are earning some serious dough from there, man.
Yeah, so if you have a good game week and you win like 3 or 4 cards and you get your 30 quid's worth of Ethereum, like you might win like 400 quid's worth of Ethereum if you just sell the card straight away. And now there's so much interest in it that when I first got on it, it was quite hard. You found yourself getting stuck with cards. But if you buy decent players, you can nearly always sell them now. So like
That
at
is,
the beginning, I was buying loads of cards, and then I realised after about a week, I'm like, oh, if I can't sell this card, it's just I've just basically paid Ethereum for a
yeah, for
card.
nothing. Yeah.
So,
And it's just sitting there gathering dust. Mental.
so
Yeah,
now
man.
you're better off even just buying the expensive cards because at least you know you can get your money back on that when you need to sell it. But even better, buy the random J League players that start playing and picking up points. they win you cards in the game, and then you can sell them for like more money than you paid for them. So
Really,
if you really want to do some digging and nerd out on football, it's a good game, and I
mate.
like. So
Yeah, I was just having a look, man. I was like, that looks promising. Seriously, does
yeah,
it?
if you know your way around buying crypto and sending it to a wallet, once you know that, that's the hardest bit. If you know how to do that,
Then
the
you're more or
rest of
less
it, like buying and selling football players
you can
and
fall
putting
into place.
five or six together.
100%, 100%. Nah, I appreciate that, man. It's only because as I said, I saw it on yours, and you've been posting quite a lot of that recently. I thought, what the hell
Yeah,
is that?
I'm trying to get those referral rewards in, man. Like if people click that link, they
Hundred
get.
percent, man.
But I
I'll
get
get
a
off.
gift card as well.
I'll grab that off you after. 100%.
You
Oh,
did it, and I got a decent card as well. So I was like, wow, that was a decent earner. Someone just signed up, and I got a card worth 200 quid for it. Like,
no way, serious,
yeah,
just from a referral,
150 quid's worth of card. You didn't
mate.
even spend much on the marketplace either, so it was a good deal all round, really.
Fair play, fair play.
So
Now,
now
definitely,
I'm gonna start sharing this.
mate, do it, 100%. You earn yourself $1,000 in a week from just referrals.
Yeah, it can be done.
Mate, I think the reason why I wanted to speak to you, flipping hell, I think looking at the internet, I was thinking, right, I know that you've been doing, you've done interviews left, right, and center. Everyone's been asking about plastician, but I thought, I'm not going to go down that route. I literally just want to have a chat with you about from where you started, but I'm not going to be, as I said, I don't want it to be like, right, so here's Plastic Man and here's Plastician. How did your name come back? I just really want to understand the man behind, um, the facades. Really, just I really want to understand from the late '90s how you came back to the present day. I wanted to know, and the reason why I want to know this is because there are budding DJs out there, there's budding producers out there, people who want to be in your shoes, but find it difficult now to get to that stage because of whatever restrictions we've got in place and how difficult it is to get into the music scene and so on and so forth. But I'd like to really just understand your journey and how is it relatable to the current day in terms of is it transferable? Can you do what you did back in the '90s to what you to do it now? If that kind of makes sense,
I
because
think, yeah, I think it's a lot harder to be honest because there's
mm,
more people doing it. When I started, it was vinyl, so there was the entry was there like I think my first interest in it, I was like trying to have a go on like my computer. There was like a little program, I can't remember what it was, like some DJ program. But back then, even just getting hold of MP3s was hard work. So I had to know someone who had decks to have a go. Um, and whereas now, I guess it's still the same, but there are options. You've got like these cheap controllers where you can kind of get a rough idea of how it works, and
basically,
then level up to working on like the CDJs, and now obviously with things like Pirate Studios and that, where you can just pay like £6 and go and have a go on the top end kit. Like I never really had that when I was growing up, so at least you've got that. It's easy, so it's easier to have a go now than it was when I started. But when I started, I think there was more opportunities because there's more clubs, more pirate radio. Well, there's probably not more pirate radio stations,
no,
more
but
radio,
there's more stations. Yeah,
but there was opportunities to get on radio and get into clubs a bit more than there is now, just because we don't have as many venues now as we did back in the day. Um, so it's a certain things like I think like the entries, it's easier to have a go now, but once you get to like that level where you can actually mix, there's thousands of DJs who can actually mix, and and technology's made it easier to be
yeah.
able to mix as well. So
Think, think button.
not even about like how good you are technically, because
Yeah,
anyone can be a good technical DJ, but if you need to be a good selector. Like if you know how to find shit that is going to blow people's minds, that's way more useful now than it used to be. Back in the day, we all were playing pretty much the same tunes, apart from those of us who cut dubs. So
literally.
we were playing the same tunes, but it was more about like how sick are you at mixing. Now it's the other way around. Like
Totally.
anyone can do a sick mix. I'm not impressed by a technical DJing at all. Like I want to hear you play something that makes me go, "What is that tune you're playing?" Like
Yeah,
that's more
100%.
important to me now than someone who can mix.
Yeah,
'Cause,
I think it's all about curating your playlist, man, and literally just
yeah,
whatever you play bangs and literally just gets the crowd going, or literally, as you said, think yo, what is that? What is that tune? Can I Shazam it? No, what is that tune? Where
What
did
is,
you get it
what
from?
is that tune factor is the big one for me as another DJ. So if you want the respect from your peers, you like other DJs and people who book DJs, you need to be impressing them with your selection more than anything. Because the way I see it, yeah, especially if we're talking about like grime and UK music, like you you anyone can walk into a rave and smash the dance playing fucking rhythm and gash and pow. It's easy. It's so easy. So that to me, as another DJ, is not that impressive. Like it's impressive to people who just want to sell tickets or want to see the crowd go nuts. Like you're gonna get that anyway. But like if you make the crowd go nuts playing a tune that I've never heard before, that blows my mind. That is when I'm like, that is a sick DJ. That's
But
someone who.
do you find that with okay, you're musically related to the scene. There's a lot of us. So a rave full of people, minority are DJs and whatever who appreciate the sound, but then you've got the majority who are just ravers who just want to go to a rave and hear a tune. But do you feel that there's an issue where yeah, you can play a tune that no one's heard of, but you play a dub that no one's heard of, but then the crowd aren't really feeling it because they don't know it. So there's that element as well of uncertainty of well, I don't know the tune.
Yeah, you got to find a balance. I think like for me, when I was playing out, I used to balance it quite well. Um, with like in the sort of days of grime and playing. It was a different time, you know. I was playing at clubs where new music was what people came out for. I don't think, especially with grime becoming such a big sound, that now 90% of the grime audience is just kids that want to hear the shit that's in the Spotify playlists at the moment. You know, that wasn't really the case when I was starting out. So it really depends where you're playing and what club nights you're playing at. If you're playing at like a proper heads club night, most of the people that attend those nights are more likely to be impressed with the new dubs. Like who's got the sickest tune that no one's heard yet. But if you're playing at like a festival and you're warming up for like a pop act, if you're trying to like go headsy with it, crowds they're just waiting to hear Shutdown or like
Basically,
and in that case, it's like if you do have to know where you're playing most of the time, like because I'll find myself playing at like some basement venue on a Wednesday night in Bristol with a curated lineup of DJs from like an obscure record label, and then on a Saturday I'm playing like main stage at Exit Festival before Skepta, and like my set is not the same on those two events. Like you're playing one night you're playing to 50 people who've come out on a Wednesday to hear the latest shit that you've never heard before, and then on Saturday you've got 20,000 kids that barely know all of Skepta's tunes.
right?
So
Yeah.
you have to find that balance, and if you can find that balance, you know you'll do all right. I think that it's just find the key to it is like knowing where you're playing and playing the room. You know, play the room, work out what is what else the promoter booked you to do, what are you there for, like, and like if you're like one dimensional, you're gonna play pretty much the same set every time, and that was the thing for me with um, a lot of grime DJs that I would find because I've kind of been on that festival circuit and toured outside of the UK as a solo act instead of just like MC's DJ.
Collective, yeah.
With the people who've just toured with an MC, you find you'll be on the lineup with them and they all play the same set because they're just playing the hype bangers. They're not really digging for new music because they don't have the opportunity to play that out because they're just playing PA mixes for an MC or something like that, right?
Right.
Like I've had to DJ on my own 90% of the time without an MC, but then I've done sets with MCs. I've done I've done sets of PA mixes for MCs as well. So I kind of know all of the different ways things work, and I think that my experience in that sense has helped me a lot.
I
And
mean,
that's
you mentioned as well being a standalone, not standalone, but being a smaller solo artist, DJing in different countries. Now, being someone that's grime stroke dubstep predominantly from your heritage within the music scene, that is quite unheard of, man. Like going to different countries and literally just playing without MCs, which goes to a point that you literally had to find that
you
kind
know,
of
I would say that like if you look beyond the grime scene, it depends where you come from. Like, if you're like predominantly a grime fan and you look at grime DJs and what's going on in grime, it might seem unusual because everyone's always with MCs. It's like
Right.
all of that. But like, if you take like drum and bass as an example, or any kind of like electronic music, you know, like techno, house, jungle, drum and bass, all that, all those DJs and producers have toured the world like forever, and grime to most of those promoters who put on that, or dubstep, or whatever they book me to do, has stemmed from that same culture. So it's like bass music, DJs, in a lot of cases MCs as well. Until you get into that techno realm, you know, where MCs ain't as much of a thing. But like, what a lot of producers within, specifically, we're talking specifically about grime here, but a lot of grime producers don't look beyond making beats for MCs or DJing for an MC. Whereas I got a taste for doing that because I kind of found myself on radio, and then the MCs didn't turn up and I had to talk on the mic. But the people who were running Rinse at the time, Dugs and Genius, heard me talking about the grime music I was playing and offered me my own show to do that because they were like, no one's really talking about this music. We've always got MCs on the shows, so we want you to do what you did that week that the MCs didn't turn up, but give you your own show to do that. And that's so when I got that, and I was also a producer, I was getting interest from abroad, like promoters in Europe and stuff like that. Before I'd even really played outside London, I was getting hit up on like internet forums by people from Vienna and people from Paris and that saying, "Oh, we throw this electronic party and we'd love to have you play some grime. Like no one's heard it here yet." And because I was contactable and I had a voice on the radio before anyone else really did, and that opened doors for me to go to like America before anyone. You know, like I was the first grime act to play in Japan. Like loads of places. There isn't a continent in this world I haven't played apart from Antarctica.
Fair
And
play.
you know, like if COVID wasn't around now, I, I'd have
Like you
probably
would have made it happen. You would have made it happen.
I'd have been putting new pins in the map this year. It all happens, but yeah, it. I think that like a lot of people within grimes, I'm talking specifically in grime because I don't feel that this is a thing with dubstep or a lot of other electronic music, but with grime, um, a lot of the producers within grime kind of look at they compare themselves and their trajectory to like rap. So like it's like, oh, you know, you do the club circuit and then you're doing stadium tour, and it's like, nah, you're missing the middle part. Like you can do club tours and like you can do concert tours in America. Like, I can go to America and do a 20-day tour, like playing. Some nights I'll be in a club in a basement venue. Other nights I'll be on a fucking stage that in somewhere that looks like a theater. Like it, there's a whole world of bookings out there that people within grime don't really realize they can do. But a lot of it is down to how the music's produced. When I was making grime music as a producer, I was making it, but I was structuring my music like instrumental music. So
Wow.
I would compare it to like a dubstep track where like it has a long build up, a drop, a breakdown, another drop, but it sounds like grime. Whereas other grime producers will just be like, they will do a 16 bar intro, a 16 bar pattern, an 8 bar chorus, and then that
And
16 and
we just repeat. Yeah.
you can't hear that tune on its own without an MC on top of it, without it getting boring after like a minute. So it sounds too simple and too basic to like the wider electronic music community and like the people that write about music and stuff. Like those instrumentals, and it's like, yeah, the beats kind of bang, but you can't write an album of beats like that and then just put it out. Like it's not, there's not enough substance to it. Whereas when I was making my stuff, I'm not saying it was the most technically astute music, but it fit that mold of like, this is instrumental electronic music more than other grime
And I
producers.
think you're very right in saying that a lot of producers, especially, I don't want to keep focusing on grime, but it was just that not a lot of thought and consideration was taken into the beat that was being made. It was literally, as we call, a set beat, made it just for a set, and then that was it. But I feel that and it's evident with your music and your catalog, that the thought process was there in terms of differentiation between the two types of grime beats. As you said, the ones with the the longer intro, the ones that you really thought about the pattern of the tune before
Try
it
and
was
make it like a song rather than like a beat,
right,
basically.
right.
Like, don't get me wrong, I've made beats that is literally just 16 and 8. You know, a lot of stuff. If I'm making something for a rapper or an MC, I'm probably going to send them something that sounds pretty much like 16 and 8 looped up until I get their vocals back, and then I might tweak bits of it to make it a bit more like a song. But you know, if I'm sending beats to a DJ who mixes with MCs, they don't need songs with breakdowns and chorus sections and all that. They just need beats. Like, I do send beats like that to DJs, but I do look beyond that, and I think a lot of producers, like we're saying, specifically within grime, are not seeing that there's a way for them to market themselves to electronic music heads, because you know, like a lot of producers that have done all right for themselves, and they get like that good press from like the resident advisors and the fact magazines of the world. Whereas a lot of other grime producers are literally just making beats, hoping that they get a placement on an album somewhere. And like I always looked a bit beyond that. I saw myself as more of like a solo artist than like a producer for someone else.
Being someone that's very involved in the music scene, I mean, you're an A&R consultant for Pirate, as well as your own Terrorism label as well. But someone who's got a lot of industry knowledge. Why? And again, I don't want to keep focusing on grime, but you've lived and breathed the grime scene from inception. Why has the grime scene not progressed to the levels of other genres, such as, I mean, I know it's difficult to compare it with trap and drill. So obviously, trap and the drill is like current at the moment. I don't know how the longevity of drill. I don't know how long it's going to carry on for. But why hasn't grime really got into the mainstream? I mean, yeah, you've got Chipmunk and Stormzy and whatever, but then they steer off grime.
I get you get this a lot, and it baffles me because like, how much more mainstream do you want it to get? Like, people like Dave and Stormzy and Skepta have had number one albums and have won Mercury prizes and have headlined Glastonbury. Like, what more do people expect? I don't like.
I mean,
As
yeah.
you asked me the question, like, what would you what would be bigger? What would make grime bigger than it is in
Well,
your?
what I mean, yeah, you've got the odd. I mean, not the odd, but you've got Stormzy, Chipmunk. Okay, you've got. I understand you've got those, but what I'm saying is, you've got artists within the current grime scene at the moment who have been doing it have been very consistent in terms of their productivity, their work rate, their quality of work and their uniqueness and so on and so forth. But it seems that they're quite stagnant. They're not moving, and I don't know if it's down to them, but always down to
No,
certain.
it's a mixture of things because the music industry is like a marketplace. But like, if we talk about like an example of, if you give me like an example of an artist that maybe isn't where you would expect them to be, like why hasn't that person blown up? And then I'll explain why I think they haven't. Like, give me an example of like a grime MC, and let's do an MC because that would make
Manga, manga.
Oh, in my head, I was thinking of Manga as well, right? Because he's a perfect example of like someone who's really talented, has obviously knows what he's doing, has a
Mhm.
sound, thinks a lot about his artistic direction, has a kind of persona online, the way that he delivers his updates to his fans, he engages with his audience, right? So he ticks a lot of boxes.
Mm.
Now, the question of why hasn't Manga got as big as a Stormzy or a Skepta? And I think that like, when artists, you can be a really good artist and and not reach those levels and still like, for me, like Manga's in a position now where if he carries on doing what he's doing, he'll be nice, he'll be fine, whether he has a hit in the charts or not. If and when things come to a position where you can tour again, he'll find himself on those festival lineups, he'll get the write-ups in certain magazines, he'll be like, he'll be someone that everyone within the grime scene can be proud of and looks at him as like, that person moves with integrity, like they do their thing, they know like who they are. They're not. It would almost be like for Manga to like go the next step up. He has to he has to sell a little bit of himself to the mainstream audience. Now, like most of the stuff that he writes sounds like pure grime. It sounds like his flow is like very grime. It's very like he's not borrowing flows off of like
Mm.
American Hook Records. You know, like beat selection wise, it's always very typically like grime, sometimes quite throwback in its sound as well. So like his music is for the grind, it's for the heads, it's for the purists, and that's not a bad thing because if you can like one of the best things I ever read about like music was this theory of it's called like the thousandth fans theory, and it's basically like built for like today's market is if you can get 1,000 people to buy your album for a tenner on Bandcamp for say like Manga's a good example because he uses Bandcamp very well,
Mm.
and he probably has at least hundreds of people that buy everything he puts out on there, right? So he's building his way there anyway. If you can get 1,000 people to buy a £10 album on Bandcamp, that is the equivalent in today's like price. It's probably even less than that now. You probably get less than 1,000 people to buy it and earn more. But at the time I read this, 1,000 people buying your album for a tenner on Bandcamp was the same as 1,000 people listening to that same album every day, 10 times a day, for a whole year on Spotify.
That is ridiculous.
How many people have got a time in their day to listen to an album 10 times a day,
That is
every
absolutely,
day for a year?
that is absolutely mental.
So like, while we're all looking at like who's doing numbers on Spotify and that,
Mm.
someone like Manga who has an engaged audience on a platform like Bandcamp, if he can sell like 400 copies of his album on Bandcamp, he's nicer than someone who's doing like 5 million streams on Spotify over the course of a year. Do you know what I mean? And and also that rolls into, from my experience, it eventually does roll into like Spotify and that because the people that curate at Spotify are not looking at what other Spotify playlists are doing as much. They're looking at what the real curators are doing on like on things like Bandcamp. What are people buying? Like what are the heads buying? What are like the music nerds getting excited about within those subgenres? And Manga is 100% one of those artists, but he does it without selling a part of himself to anyone else's agenda. It's like this is me. It's what I do, and through doing that, he has like such a strong brand that people like you and me look at Manga and think, I rate that. Like I actually like that. And when he puts something out, I'm way more likely to like make time to check it because I'm like, I know it's going to be real. It's like
Mm.
if I listen to a Manga EP or project, it's going to feel like a real project. It's going to feel like everything's written like in context with it as a piece of art.
Literally,
Whereas a lot of other people just like, I've got 20 tunes, I'm banging them out on a mixtape, and some of them are dog shit, and some of them are, a couple of them are great. But like, I'm not going to sit there and listen to 20 tracks that sounds like someone's just dumped their hard drive on. But Manga, he put like 5 to 7 tracks together, and I listen to them, and they're coherent. It's like watching a story
as
unfold
I
for me.
said, yeah, it literally just flows from one tune to the
And
next.
that's true artistry. But the mainstream, like 90% of people who listen to music on a daily basis, don't care for that. So he's catering for the 10% of people who really give a shit about what he's doing, rather than the 90% of people who just bang a playlist on in their car, drive to work, and couldn't tell you what they've even been listening to. And the artists that do well in that world are not the Mangas. They're the people that are a little bit more relevant to fall into those like easy listening type playlist or bit of daytime airtime on the BBC. And that's not to take anything away from those who have done that, because there's an art to that as well. 100% there's an art to that. If you really want to like reach those levels, you have to find again that it's like what we're saying with DJing, but from an artist perspective, it's like, here's my art. I need to do this much like real artistry, and I need to do this much like marketing, uh, brand, like how cool do I look online, and who am I hanging out with, and who's backing me, and who can I collab with. Like you need to like piggyback off of other people's success a little bit more, and like find yourself in those circles of like nearly pop star type people, like roll with those people, you know, jump on their track, collab with them, be on those festival stages, you know, speak to the daytime radio hosts as opposed to like the specialist grime DJs at night time. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
Obviously, doors don't open for everyone, but if they do, the way that you approach those opportunities dictates how high up the mainstream ladder you'll climb. And I think that artists like Manga is the main reason he's not is because he's not playing into those. Like, if you gave Manga that opportunity to do that, I'm sure he'd do a good job of it.
Absolutely.
He's not aiming. He's not looking at those opportunities. I might be wrong. He might be looking at that and be like, I want that, but maybe the way he's going about it is not like your typical way. But I do believe that the way he's going about his business and his music now will give him a much longer lifespan than like someone who might blow up, have a really sick album, be in the top 10 of the UK charts, do a sick tour next year, and then something else blows up next year, and that's not cool anymore. Because I saw that happen with dubstep when dubstep started getting into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
People were making albums thinking of like how this is going to this is going to do well in the charts, blah blah blah, writing these albums that sound like big production, pop music, big hooks, big drops, like festival music, and they were losing that essence of what dubstep was to like
Well, it
their.
really is. Mm-hmm.
So they lose their core fans, but they gain a whole new fan base of people that are just like they're just into what everyone else is into. So if you're the coolest artist in like that borderline mainstream of like the niche genre that you're into, you're going to be one of those people that pushes into the mainstream, and then suddenly like you're looking at like, right, there's a million people that might hear this record. If like 10,000 of them save it on their playlist, then that's 10,000 new fans. But that 10,000 new fans, if you don't convert those 10,000 people into like,
Exactly.
they'll
It's not.
just they'll forget about you in a
It's
few
not
months.
sustainable. It's not sustainable. Yeah, exactly that. They'll literally be a fan for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
And whereas your core followers are going to be living and breathing what you
yeah. If you can
started off
keep
with.
engaging that core audience, but bringing new people into it by maybe not even like going mainstream, but like maybe just like like reach other people's little pockets of fans that are into stuff that sounds a bit like you, or like someone who might be slightly bigger than you within the scene, but is still like quite a headsy artist. Like the heads are into that act, but maybe some people that are into that haven't heard me yet. But you know, then maybe it's like maybe I should like collab with that artist, or rather than looking at like the mainstream, like what artists can I like leech off of a little bit more, like look at the circle that you're working within, and work and put something in to
Mhm.
get a little bit more out, like establish yourself. Like that's Manga all over. Like he's cemented in grime, and like
Uh,
even the pop acts that do grime, they want to work with a Manga because he gives them like he
Potential.
validates what they're doing.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
exactly.
you're real grime. If you're working with Manga, then that's grime. That's the grime record. Like, and that you can't. If you don't lose that, you're good for life. In my opinion, like you're good. You might not be like might not be raking millions in, but over the course of the next 15, 20 years, you might make the same as someone who gets a 300 grand advance this week and doesn't put another mainstream album out again because the next time they try, they're not cool anymore. The kids ain't into that now. You get
You've
dropped
got,
by the label and you're struggling again. Right?
mate, you've got a lot of knowledge and wisdom, man. Seriously, because you can. I mean, it's silly.
I've seen it happen, and I think like especially living through that, especially like the dubstep, the rise, the big bubble exploding, it like changed the world, and then all of a sudden, oh no, that's not cool anymore. That like isn't that music just like a meme? It's like
Mm,
it almost became a meme, like the sound of dubstep, the word dubstep. Like I was watching TV with my wife the other day, right? Fucking what program was it? Sorry for swearing.
so-
Designated Survivor. It's a Netflix series with like Kiefer Sutherland. Like it's like 24, but
yeah.
Netflix. And one of the first episodes of that, his son's there and he's like listening to music and he's like, "What are you listening to?" He's like, "You won't like it." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "It's dubstep." And he's like, "What's dubstep?" And I'm like, "This is what happened to dubstep. It's like it became the music that parents hate. It's like which is cool for 5 minutes, but then it becomes like a glorified joke almost, and it was sad, but it happened. It was like the music became like a parody of itself almost, to the point that if you say the word dubstep, their idea of what you're talking about is not like a dark room and like everyone with their hoods up smoking weed in full with
it's
like plastic people.
it's like an
That
awkward bass face kind of. Yeah,
exactly. They're thinking like massive lights, EDM festival, like people
yeah.
headbang,
People
kids
pilling it
dancing.
up and whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like oh, that kind of is what it is, but it's kind of not. It's like
yeah.
it became hard to like picture what it actually was, and it lost itself a little bit. And
I
a
mean,
lot of artists got lost in that as well. So seeing that happen is like, you know, like I see the mistakes that some of the artists made, and you know, a lot of the ones that stuck to what they're doing have not really been harmed at all by any of it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about dubstep, and me personally, I don't know what the situation is with dubstep. I know that it's still apparent, but not as apparent as it was, a good 10 years ago.
It could be because it exploded so much to the point that like it was literally like Rusko walks down the street and TMZ reporters were following him and shit. Like
That's mad.
nuts. I was living in America around 2013 for a few months, and it was literally like people that I used to hang around with in Forward had like paparazzi following them and shit. It's like, what the fuck is going on with this? Like, it was so far removed from like what we all thought was going to happen.
Yeah,
Like, wow, I never thought it was going to be as big as this. And the music didn't feel like it was even like the sort of music that was being made was like, no one, this cannot be played on daytime radio. And no, it did. Started getting played, and it's like, wow, is this mainstream now? It
I mean,
became
you had KTB on a mystery. I mean, things like that.
even people like even on the extreme end of it, when artists like Skrillex get involved, then it's like
Yeah,
he's shouting out the Croydon crew in a fucking in the Grammys. It's like this is mental. This actually is nuts. Like none of us ever thought that would happen, but it did. And then when it did, the way every artist dealt with that, or like was inspired by, or like completely rebelled against the movement, depend on like how the next few years of their life rolled out. So like the people at the absolute top end of that are still smashing it out now, but the people that were trying to smash it out now have struggled to maintain. Whereas then the artists who just stuck to what they were doing, just like like old like the tortoise and the hare type thing. It's
yeah.
like those people just kept at it, kept putting the good music out, kept the releases coming on their label, kept pressing the vinyl, kept putting their nights on. Didn't worry about what everyone else's perception of dubstep's dead. It's like nah, they didn't care. They kept doing their thing. Look at someone like Mala. Mala's on the front cover of DJ magazine this month. That like he hasn't gone nowhere. He's still Mala. Like he's still doing his thing. He puts a record out. The same thousands of people that were listening to his DMZ records are still,
Yeah, still.
and this is what I was saying with the manga situation. Like if you look at an artist like Mala and the path he took, as opposed to like an act that maybe like hit the mainstream. I can't think of a really good example, but you know, artists that hit the mainstream heavy, people look at that and they're like, oh, what are they doing now? It's like, well, they're still doing stuff, but by comparison to the like size of the scale of things they were doing, it looks like they're doing nothing, but they're not. But Mala's like maintained, constant, like good music that has evolved beyond like just a 140 beat, whatever, but it's still relevant to people that loved what he was doing 10 years ago. But it's evolved, and it still holds that like you hear the like the realism in his music is real. It comes from the heart, and if artists can do that, you're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to like try new things. You're allowed to think, but so long as your music doesn't feel like you're just trying to get some attention from people that don't really care about your music.
I mean, we spoke about artists, but the same could be said for producers within the grime scene. Obviously, there are a selected few like yourself, Rude Kids, perfect example. But then my same question too is, what is the situation with grime producers? You could say that, well, certain grime producers are set in their ways and only want to create certain music for radio, for pirate radio, for whatever. But then there are a few who are trying to branch out and use the 140, but to a different, within a different context,
Yeah,
a different kind of melody. But why
it's
is
very
that then?
in it. It's like as a producer, because I like playing lots of different kinds of music when I DJ. When I'm making stuff, I'm always going to draw influences from grime, dubstep, drill, like fucking techno, disco, whatever I sit down to make. All those influences are always going to be in my productions, whether I'm making a 140 beat or if I'm making like an 8 minute long like ambient intro type track for like a throwback
Well,
set.
just on that, I mean, you did the perfect with a French producer. Is it Juche last year with
Yeah,
the techno track? You did a two-step flip on it. I mean,
Yeah, so he put this track out. It was like a wave track, but it kind of sounded like trance to me. When I heard it, I was like, this sounds like slowed down trance. But I heard it in my car, and I was like, I'm hearing like a garage beat under this. But then I'm thinking, I didn't really know why I was hearing a garage beat, but in my head it sounded good, and I'm like, I need to get those stems off him and see if I can do something with it. And yeah, like that track came out nice, but when I made it, I was like, I don't know if anyone will play this because it is a bit weird. And but a part of me was like, it might be good, but then I was like, ah, oh, trance is kind of cheesy, and I was sat on it for ages thinking, I'm not sure if I can let this one out there because are people going to think this is me trying to run after the bag because it
mm,
sounds a bit like EDM, like it's got those EDM trancey kind
yeah,
of. And I'm like, this can either be like seen as really clever, or it can be seen as he's trying really hard to get that mainstream bag.
yeah,
And but it's not mainstream because it's two step garage and wave and trunk, and it's like, if anything, it's going to be the least cool thing I've ever done. It'll either be the least cool thing I've ever done, or it'll be the absolute coolest thing I've ever done. And fortunately for me, when it came out, a lot of like music press were like, "This is fucking clever.
mate.
This is
Honestly,
cool. Like, what what was going through your mind when you did this?" And it's like, then I started getting these questions, and then like it got put in what like Odessa, who's
yeah,
like a electronic musician. They put it in their playlist like as like one of their main influences from this collaboration project they're doing, and it started finding its way into these little pockets that I never thought, like it went into like the auto playlist on Spotify, which is a really cool like electronic music playlist, and I'm like, wow, like the cool music people think this is cool, so that's good, like. But it did for months. I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I should put
mate.
this because it's
Honestly, that is a tune I could sit in my car driving on the M25 and put that on, and it would. Because yeah, for me, I'm not a trance person, but with the two-step flip, it just I don't know what it was, man. It just really one, it made me relate back to the like obviously the early 2000s, but two,
yeah,
I do like the EDM sound.
it's catchy. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So that was the main thing. Was like, oh, this is way catchier than most stuff that I do. So I mean, maybe it was me that was like, oh, a part of me is like, well, as soon as you make something catchy, it sounds like you're trying to attach like you're trying to like
right.
draw in cool
Branch out.
music. And I'm like, oh, is that gonna hurt my rep? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, my reputation on the line here, like, but that wasn't really the intention. I knew when I heard that song, I just heard something else, and it was like a garage beat. And then when it came out, everyone loved it, and it went the right way, luckily. But that, yeah, it was never my intention to like push that
No,
onto the
I
radio
mean,
play.
I think you've said previously that you're not one. I know you're not one to sell out on yourself and try and move off and try and
Yeah,
attach yourself. But I think that your music has always been, and as you said, you've always tried to overlap into different genres, but allow the DJ or the listener to relate back to
yeah,
your originality, if that makes sense, but still keep.
exactly. It's like the thing with that is like with anything, if you can find yourself a little niche. So like I like playing all these different kinds of music. So if I make a beat, I might need, I might have a load of drill records that I really like, or I might have a load of grime. And then I'm like, right, I'm in the studio today. I need some songs that I can mix between like a grime beat and a drill track, so that it sounds like, the mix sounds like nice. It's not like, oh, what the fuck? That doesn't sound like it should have mixed with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So like I'll try and make something that sits in between those, and that was like how back in the day when I started producing, I was trying to make stuff that sits between grime and dubstep. And at the time, I was the only person that was playing those two things together because nobody really had access to the two like I
and
did.
on Nation Radio as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I needed that kind of beat, and but I think that works well because it means that you never really sound exactly like anyone else. And then if you really nail it, you get heads that are into one sound thinking that sounds cool, and heads that are into the other sound thinking that sounds cool. Suddenly, you've got two sets of like audiences that both think what you're doing is pretty cool. And I think I pretty much built a career on that without even. It wasn't even like intentional initially,
You
but
just
as
fell
I've
into
continued,
it.
I realised, do you know what? Like, so long as I make whatever I'm getting into still relevant to people that were into what I was doing before, I'll just continue to open doors to like new little audiences of people that haven't heard of me yet. And with the
Mate,
wave stuff, it was like all these kids that were listening to like trap beats and like lo-fi beats and stuff were like hearing me playing this wave shit, and all these new producers like that I'm finding their music on SoundCloud, and they're getting loads of love from all these Rinse FM listeners in London that like are like, what the fuck? Like, I followed you because I heard you on this Plastician show, and they're like, who the fuck's Plastician? And then they dig around and find out who I am, and then realise that I'm playing this music, but there's loads of other producers that sound kind of similar to what they were doing, and it built a little community of producers that were just like involved in being a part of my Rinse shows, really.
I
And
think
that started that, and it's just like I'm always just like trying to curate audiences around what I'm doing, so that like there's a collective effort to like send me some more stuff that I might like that sounds like that. And you find it like, you know, do these mixes or do these Twitch streams, and producers are hanging out, and I'll be working on something that's like some kind of like drill bass line with fucking breakbeat or something like that. And then like people will be like, yeah, I really like that beat you made. Like, I've made this really chill like breakbeat tune, and I'm like, this is cool. Like, I would play this. Can you send it to me? Like, then bang, like I'm playing their song in my mixes, and like the circle of life has like created itself in that my audience on Twitch is creating music for my DJ sets, so they're hanging out in my DJ set waiting for their song to play. They're sharing these clips of me DJing and playing
yeah,
their friends who are also producers are like, that song's sick. I'll do something. Oh, I might send it to him as well. Someone else is now engaged in my Twitch programs, is sending me music. I've now got 20 tracks that kind of sound like this weird little genre that we've created in my Twitch streams. And my DJ sets are now being influenced by all this stuff. So it's like creating a community, which was what the grime and dubstep things were built on in a more physical
well,
sense.
yeah, you say that. I mean, we spoke about Twitch and connecting with artists and social media. Mate, how powerful was MSN Messenger for you from the
Yeah,
early?
I mean, that was pretty much how I got to know JME. Really, we would sit on MSN. I don't even. I think I met him through MSN before I met him in person, if I'm not mistaken. And we were just sending beats to each other because he's one of the only other people I knew within like our sort of scene who like had records out, or I'd heard him on the radio that I could contact on MSN, because not many other people were like that tech
Right,
minded.
especially within the grime scene. Yeah,
Yeah, so I was like, me and JME were just like swapping ideas over MSN, and just like catching jokes and like writing stupid bars and stuff, like all kind. You know, we were kids. We were like 20 years older. He's probably like in his teens. He's a bit younger than
yeah.
me. Like it, MSN was one thing, but then like when you met at radio or at Forward or Eskimo Dance or like all these little nightclubs like straight out of Bethnal and all these nights that we used to play at. And then like you'd end up on these like photo shoots that were like, you know, like ID magazine doing a
Hmm.
piece on the grime scene, and it's like suddenly you're like you keep bumping into these people and you become friends because we share like common ground and we know each other, we respect each other musically, but when we also kind of like have banter together, and then we end up doing a gig in like another country, so we're sat on a flight together, and you know we're all having a drink at the gig, and then like something funny happens, and then the next time you're laughing about that funny thing that happened when like you saw J2K in like
Yeah,
Sweden or something.
yeah.
All them things. It's just like we created these friendships that were born around this music, and I think that's one thing that maybe is missing now a little bit more, is that because everything's online more, those real life connections are not as
Yeah.
made as, but they definitely help build everything really.
I mean, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm glad where we are right now, but I still do miss the physical interactions of meeting people and
Yeah,
speaking on MSN and meeting them and then talking
that,
about and reminiscing.
shaking that promoter's hand of the event that you've turned up to, saying, "Oh, I love the
Whereas,
life."
yeah,
Like making that actual connection with someone rather than just an email or tweeting someone. It's not the same. It's not the same for me anyway.
being a Radio 1 DJ, being, as I said before, someone who pioneered grime and dubstep for the first time on a nation radio, did you find obstacles and difficulties with playing grime on a mainstream radio station, not by just um by your listeners, but your colleagues as well? Did they find you think, well, what's this all about?
Well, I don't think for firstly like there was a lot of differences in like the way that my show was put together. So when I first got in there, I was getting things like, "Oh, can you send us your track list before you come?" And I'm like, "I don't know what I'm playing until I go there and mix it. Like the track list has to come after." And they were like, "Oh, right, like this person does this and does that," and then like they're gonna get. And I was like, "Oh, that's not really how I do radio. I just kind of turn up, start
No, it's
mixing,
both.
start talking, and yeah, I'll tell you what I played after." So there was that, but then also like I came into that from doing pirate radio on my own for like by that point it had probably been about 6 years. I think maybe I'd been on the pirate radio circuit, and doing a show at the BBC was very different in that like I had other people in the room handing me bits of paper with things that I have to remember to say, and say this, and can you just do this, and like right, can we do a quick time check and let people know what time it is, and it's like wow, like there's so
Wow.
much other shit that I had to do that, and I listen to myself on those shows back, and I don't sound like me because I can tell how stiff and like
Yeah,
hyper
controlled.
and like trying to talk a different way so I don't sound like weird on the radio when people tune in at like 2 in the morning in a taxi. But yeah, there was that. That was the main barrier for me was just like adapting to a different audience. But that was like my first experience really of like, you know, you know how like when you have a job interview, you behave slightly differently. Like you want to present
Oh,
yourself like as employable, and that's kind of how I felt when I was at the BBC. Was like, I had to keep my guard up to a certain point, and I think that like I was there for maybe a year, and then we had the Christmas party, and I got fucking smashed at it. Like, and I think I let the mask slip a little bit.
yeah.
And actually, after that, people got on with me much better
The
because,
boy
like,
from the boy from Thornton Heath really came out of the Christmas party.
yeah, exactly that. I got a bit carried away, and I was like Annie Mac in a headlock and shit, and
As
yeah,
you do.
doing shots with Vernon Kay at the bar and shit. Like, I got carried away. I kind of lost myself a bit, but I think that helped me a bit. And then after that, I was a bit more comfortable. But I think it was more. There wasn't really any restrictions in what I could play. I had to obviously have radio clean edits, but
Yeah, cool.
there was actually more restrictions back then on what I could play on One Extra because anything that suggested violence or gun violence was like you can't play that on One Extra, which is really jokes when you think about it because it's like that's racism though. Like we're trying to be like anti-racism, but
Yeah,
you're battling racism with like what you're the reasons you're giving me is like you can't play anything that like suggests gun violence on a black radio station. So, but that's racist.
yeah.
Like,
Basically,
if I can play it on Radio One, why can't I play it on One Extra?
for one extra. Yeah.
That was one thing that I remember I had to do a cover show. I think Cameo's show on One Extra at the time. He was like away, and they're like, "Can you cover Cameo's show?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." But like, there was a lot less I was allowed to play on One Extra than there was on Radio One. Radio One was a lot more
Wow.
like,
Really?
you can play what you want, just no swearing.
Oh my god, that is mental.
I'm sure it's different now, but this was
Yeah, it
like,
must be.
but yeah, I think like political correctness like went so far backwards on itself there at that point, whereas I feel like now it's like that you could never run with that now. And in fact, like some of the content that One Extra puts out these days, I'm like, whoa, they can get away with saying that shit. Okay,
Um,
so like,
um,
I'm pretty certain that isn't the case now. But yeah, when I was on the BBC, it was definitely there was more restrictions on what I could play on One Extra.
imagine. Just the last few points. As a music producer, especially during lockdown, I'll be going on Twitter quite a lot, and I see a lot of producers are going through a very difficult time from a mental perspective. Really, really difficult to see when I'm reading this kind of stuff, where they're really, open themselves up, where they're finding it very difficult to motivate themselves to produce material, because of, as you said, trying to keep up with their peers, and two, going through a difficult time, as we all are. As a music producer such as yourself, I know you're actively making music. What would you say is your motivational tip or technique to keep you going, to keep maintaining that level of standard which you had prior to lockdown?
I think for me, like I've never really been. I don't think of myself as like a prolific producer. Like I'm not one of them people who just gets up and turns a computer on and starts working on music. Like I'm definitely like my day to day is a lot more um, music business than it is making music. I think, and I don't know exactly why that is, but I think it's because I got into this as a DJ, and I use production to like try and get more gigs and. Um, as as time's gone on, it's got harder to get gigs because there's less venues and obviously sounds change and you can only have like your initial like buzz once
Mhm.
in your career. You might get other bits where like you make a banger or something like that, and it's like there's a little resurgence or a bit of interest in what you do. But you'll never be like you can only be a new artist once, and everyone's always looking for what's next. So you know,
Good point.
I come as I've got older. I think I'm just a lot more respectful and um, accepting of the process. So where other people who are maybe still a little bit earlier in their process are probably struggle with the fact that you might go a few months without a gig, or you might oh that song didn't get into a playlist, or
Mhm.
all those things that we deal with all the time. I think like it. I've just I'm really tough skinned now in that like I've been through the ups and downs so many times, and I've hit the lows of the lowest of the lows, and I know what that feels like. That now when I start finding myself going into that downward
You're
spiral,
able to pull
I'm like,
yourself out.
I'm like, let me take a step back for a minute, assess the situation, realize it's all right. Things will come back round. Just crack on, do what you're doing, or like take a break. Don't force it. Sometimes you can sit in front of the computer and like, I've got to make a beat today, and just starting it is a win already. Yeah, if you turn the computer on and just have a go, you've won anyway, right? Even if it doesn't come out good, the fact that you've had a go, because I find with me is like sometimes I'll be like thinking, oh, I really need to make that. Oh, I need to finish that beat. I need to do that, and I put it off so much. But then sometimes if I just turn it on and just start messing about with it, something might happen, and I'm like, oh, that sounds sick.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly what I needed to do. And then bang, tune's finished. But like I've been putting that off weeks and weeks. Whereas like sometimes if you just give it a go, great. But if you do give it a go and it doesn't work out, that's fine. Like 90% of shit that I make will never come out ever. Like I sit here like I've probably made 100 ideas over the last year on Twitch, and like people are like, oh, have you finished it? And I'm like, nah, because the next time I opened it, it was sounded dead to me, and like
Yeah.
I'll just try something else. But I just accept that. That is the process. Sometimes you don't have to finish every tune. Sometimes you go and open a tune and it's like, oh, that's dead. And like you might go a month without finishing anything, but that's fine because in 2, 3 months' time, you might sit down and start writing the best shit you've ever done. Like, so in terms of like motivation, I'm quite a demotivated person to get in the studio at the moment because a lot of my motivation comes from getting gigs. So
Mhm.
the fact that there are no gigs now, it's like I'm less I'm less like motivated to get on and like finish some music to try and tempt people into booking me. Like, oh, he's
Right.
got
Right.
so I'm not forcing it. I do get on in the studio, but most of the time that's because of my Twitch streaming. So like my Twitch streaming has actually like got me in the studio, just opening up the FL Studio and having a little go.
I mean, I saw a video the other day. Literally, you were just on your FL Studio live stream of
Yeah.
you just making a beat, and
And sometimes it comes out good, and then I'm like, oh, I'll finish that, and I finish it, and like because of those streams, I've finished like 15 to 20 like beats. They're not like instrumental electronic music like amazing tracks, but they are beats that like I could send to rappers or MCs and see if like it's of use to them. So I wouldn't have that many. Like I'm slow when it comes to production. Like I'll chip away at bits for like months on end. Then I'll sit on them. I'll wait until I can find a B side or whatever. So like I've got songs that I've been sat on for like 3 or 4 years that still ain't out. That I still have plans to put out at some point. I'm just trying to build a package around them. But in terms of just like thing, yeah, I just like I recommend. It's hard. It's easier said than done, but because I've been through it and I know what it's like when like you get really low and it feels like there's nothing you can do. But there
Mhm.
is always a way around it, and I think reading. I've read some books, like not even like music books, just like about mindset and stuff like that. And I've been through some like horrific tragedies in my family life, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, I mean, we've had some tough years in my family, and we've dealt with loss and like sudden loss, and like when something like that happens that close to you, you realize like certain things, you put certain things into perspective, and it's like me getting really down about the fact that I haven't done a gig for 6 weeks or something like that. In the grand scheme of things, is like, do you know what? It's not that bad, and
Mhm.
you'll be all
I
right.
mean,
And
especially for you, when you wake up in the morning, you see your wife and your two children. That in
exactly.
itself is another motivational tool.
So there's that, but then another thing that I found like with music that I found really hard to deal with at times when it did feel like the world was coming on top of me was the thing that I think is what a lot of people in music will probably like relate with, and in terms of mental health, is when you feel bad or like you feel like everything's going to shit and you're not having a good time of it and you might want to quit, and like I've been there, but one of the times that sticks with me was when the last time it really happened to me was like 2013 around October, and I was really down. But where I was like in New York in a really nice hotel room, and I'd done a really good show, a well-paid gig the night before. It was turned out well. Um, it had been a quite a quiet year leading up to that, so like, I think that this was like compounded to this point where there was a lot of doubt about how much longer I could survive, like work-wise, doing what I was trying to do and like waiting for gigs and stuff like that. So I had to change what I was doing, but it came on top a bit for me in this hotel where I was just like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. This is shit. Like, I can't believe like it's got to this point. And then there was this moment of realization that like, what the fuck am I getting upset about?
Yeah.
I'm in a hotel in New York, and this created a weird and even worse. This created it even worse for me because there I am not enjoying what I'm doing, but I'm also hating myself for the fact that I'm sitting there in a fucking hotel room in New York beating myself
Angry.
up. It's
Yeah.
like if I was 16 years old or 17 years old when I first got into music, it's like you're going to go to New York, you're going to play a sick gig, you're going to
You
be
would
in this
laugh. You'd laugh.
like, oh my god, I'd love that. And there I am hating it. And there's a part of me that's hating myself even more for the fact that I'm not enjoying that. And it's like I feel like most musicians probably go through that. It's like it's like it piles on top. There's like you feel bad, but you also feel guilt for feeling bad, and also like perception is like the rest of the world. If you come out and say, do you know what, I've been having a shit time of late, I'm not feeling good. There'll always be someone on Twitter saying, mate, you're living the dream. Everyone would love to be in your
Yeah.
position. And it's like, so you can't open up. You feel like you can't open up about it. So, oh shit, like you got to hold that in, and holding it in is worse than like talking about it. And as a musician and someone who's been there, I totally understand that you can be at the top of your game, or you can be like just struggling to get started, and the mental health thing is not situational at all. It just sometimes your brain just gets at you, and
And,
I
and
think
I
it's
think
just as you get older, maybe just like trying to recognize those patterns and that cycle that you'll find yourself like, I'll still have days where I'm like, oh fuck it, I can't, I don't want to stream, or I can't, but that's fine to feel like that. Take a day out, go do
exactly
something else,
recoup.
spend some time away from work for a bit, and then in a week's time turn the computer on and see what happens. Like
100%.
yeah, it is hard, and I accept that like it is harder for some than it is others, but I think for me it was like I read a book or I listened to an audio book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Like that day that I felt like that, I thought I've got to do something about this because like my brain is just
Eating you up inside. Yeah.
right inside. I was like, I just felt like guilt, but I was also deeply saddened by what situation I found myself in work wise. And I listened to this book, and it talks about that whole defeating what he calls resistance. And resistance is like basically sitting around thinking about doing that thing that you want to do but not doing it. A bit like I was saying, if you just open up FL and just start messing about, sometimes it
Yeah.
will come good and you might end up writing a sick tune. So like even just opening FL and having a little go, you've won for the day. Even if you create a bunch of shit, you've created like you've done something. And this book was about that. And then it kind of like it was really nice. It was a short book. It's not long. I listened to it on my flight home from that New York gig, and then I landed back and I was like, I felt so energized and good about what I was trying to do. It was like it really nailed on the importance of like being a creative anyway. You know, like what you're doing is just like by definition is like creating something that you hope will have like an a positive effect on someone else, and it's like that in itself is like amazing that you have that audience of people that are open to like you entertaining them
Yeah.
or making their day a bit better or you know like helping.
Literally a reverse domino effect. Literally a reverse domino effect. Yeah.
I listened to that and I was like, wow, I felt so much better about, you know, even if I wasn't having a great time of what I was doing, it's like this is still pretty sick what I'm doing, and the fact that people are interested in what I'm doing. So that book really helped me, and then yeah, I started getting on, and I was like, you know, I changed the way I started running the label. I was putting different. I stopped worrying too much about what other people thought about me, and started doing a bit more of what I wanted to do, which was like I didn't want to just rep for like grime and dubstep. I wanted to bring all this other music into my radio show that I listened to. It was just like, you know, like maybe I can't mix it just yet, but I'll figure out a way eventually. So I was just playing all this different music on my radio show, and it did piss a few people off that were like, "Oh, like why
What's
don't you
it?
just play bangers?" Like, and it's like,
Yeah.
but it opened me up to like people that like just listen to music, you know, like want to hear something new, and then I feel like I opened a whole new audience up to what I was doing, and I felt much happier in what I was playing, even though there was no gigs for what I was doing at all. So I had to create that as well. Like, all right, well, I have to put on my own gigs, like put my own nights and book the artists that I like, that I think makes like the night sound like a long DJ set, like a story.
Yeah.
And then people started to like really like those events as well because they didn't really know what all they were going to get till they got there. So people would turn up for the first tune of the night and leave at the end of it, and it's like people flying in from China to come to the gig and stuff like.
Crazy.
So like that just like gave me this sense of like purpose a bit more.
Purpose.
Yeah, and I think now you know I do still get moments where I'm like I don't know if I want to do this anymore, but it's just different now. It's weird. Like I feel like I deal with it better,
I mean,
and
you. No, go
yeah,
ahead.
just accepting that sometimes life is going to be shit as well. Like you can't always be happy, and do you know what? Someone is going to die close to you, or someone is. The only thing that you can control in life, you can't control that. You can't control everything in life, but you can control how you react to things in life. So if you get dealt a shit hand one day, and you're going to spend the next month really like feeling like the world is out to get you, and like that's just bad luck.
Hey, you're making me teary-eyed, man. Flipping hell.
It's true. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you get shit. Like we're gonna have shit days, and the way that you react to that shit will, you know, if you just stay positive about it, or not always even staying positive. You can feel like shit. It's okay to feel like shit, but just find a way to push through, basically, and that's it. Like I said, like we've had dealt with some shit. Really, have had to deal with some bad shit, but it's just you got to keep going, man. And I can't like stress enough how helpful like some of those books and listening to things and just like getting some different perspective on what you're doing, even from a non-music thing, you know, like just from like a mindset and all that kind of shit. It's mad. There's mad shit out there that open my eyes and ears up to things, and I feel like as at the age I'm at now with kids and all that, it's just like I'm so much more grounded that I can go through a shit period, but accept that it's all right, man. You might have a couple of shit months, but you will find a way
You'll
out of
bounce
it.
back. You'll bounce back. I mean, I'm gonna end this on a positive, man, because bro, honestly, man, that's what you speak. You've got a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and you've really made me feel and made me realize that there's a bigger picture out there, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. And
Yeah,
as difficult as it is when you're in that situation to see that light at the end of the tunnel, it's there. But with
yeah.
all the
I mean, this
support and
situation we're in now more than ever, it's just like this is shit for everyone. Like, let's not. You can't paint it with glitter. This is a very shit time for the world, not just for like music. Like it's an especially shit time for musicians that you know, I feel bad for anyone that was like just on the come up, and it's like, oh, you know, all that momentum's gone for you. But don't worry, like we'll get through it, and you can pick straight back up. But in the meantime, you know, find some bits you can do. There's bits you can do. You just gotta like keep yourself busy, keep yourself out there.
Well,
Really.
a perfect example for you just to end off is, I mean, you mentioned about how you sometimes have to pull away and then come back.
Mm.
And as you said, you've got to keep the momentum going. And you did keep the momentum going with the Dad Joke Bible, which I bought at Christmas. Fantastic book. I mean, was that something which you were working on for quite a long time, or was that something during the lockdown? Because obviously that's published, what was it, 17th of November? It's something in November, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So obviously, I've been sort of like sharing silly jokes on Twitter and stuff for a few years, and I think last year someone was like, "You should put these in a book," and I didn't look into it fully, but I was like, "Oh, you know, it'll probably take me ages to press and get it printed and get it delivered, and like, how do I distribute it, and all these questions." And I was like, "It's probably too late now," because it was probably like November when someone mentioned it, and I thought I could probably do that, just like find all my old tweets, copy and paste them into like a book or something. And then someone, I thought about it, like maybe like summertime. I thought, oh, you know, like everyone's locked down, you know, money's not coming in from gigs. I wonder if you can earn money from that. How much is it going to cost me to make a book? Blah blah blah. And I looked into it, and I saw these videos online about like, oh, you know, Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. It's like you can publish your own book. There are no upfront costs. They just take a percentage of any sales you make. And I was like, that's amazing. So like, if I can write a book, if I can find time to like write this, like put this together, then I can get a book out there. And then I was like, right, how long does it take to turn it round? Like, what's my deadline? So I'm looking into this in like October, and it's like, you know, like when you've done it,
What,
it
October
takes,
last year, 2020?
yeah, literally took me like a month. I swear to
What?
God. I looked at it in October, and I realised from watching this video that within about 3 days of you uploading it, it will be live on Amazon, and that's for print and for digital. So I was like, sweet, like if I can get this out for before Christmas, then it'll be, you know, like something to promote up to Christmas. Like it's a stocking filler.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, cool.
like it's a bit of a novelty item. It's not like it's a completely different thing. So I thought if I can get this out before Christmas, it gives me a chance of maybe selling some copies, right? Um, so in like a week, I learned how to format and upload a book to Kindle, and then I spent about 2 weeks just going through my tweets, finding all the good jokes, weeding out the shit ones. Then there's other things I've done, bits of content for Pirate with dad jokes and that at festivals. So I had like some pages that I copied and pasted loads of funny jokes into to like have them at like Boomtown Festival and that. So I found all them, picked all the golden ones out of there, and then I was like digging around the internet. I'm like, there are loads of joke websites. Let me find all the best ones. Like, so I've got some of my own. I've got some of the ones that I tweeted. I've got. I thought if I can get like, if I can basically get to the point where I've got like 100+ pages of jokes, then that will feel like a book, like 100 pages. So how many jokes is that? Like 2 jokes a page, like a minimum of 200 jokes. And when I started just pacing, I realised I've already got about 70. I need to find about 120 jokes to put in it, and I'm start chipping away. And within a couple of weeks, I had all the jokes, and then I had to spend like 3 or 4 days just figuring out how to format it so that the page is printed properly. And honestly, like from October, it was about 4 weeks the whole thing, like, and then it was out. Like
My
I took about
God.
4 weeks from, like learning how to write a book to like publishing my first book.
Has that spurred you on to do more?
Yeah, I'm writing one now. Writing one now about a bit like what we've been talking about, like so just about being an independent musician, and you know like ways to maintain like just like maintain it, because I've never been like super rich or like super successful. Like I'm not a pop star, but within the industry I've been working in nothing but music for 20 years now. Like
Yeah.
started in distribution, was doing pirate radio, did radio, toured as a DJ full time, did a college course like in music tech, I've done like loads of shit, and I still do so much shit, but everything's within music. and I've bought I buy myself time to work on music if I want.
Yeah,
Like if I want to now, I could just not work for anyone but myself for a few weeks and write an album if I wanted to. But I'm happy. I like being busy doing bits at Pirate, doing bits for myself, doing my Twitch streams, doing the label, doing. I like having loads on the go, so this suits me for now. It might not suit everyone, but I figured that I could share some insight into like how you might be able to like get a foot in the door, and then all the little things you can do to save money or make a bit of extra money. Like what are the things I've found online that are really useful to save me like an hour of my week every week, or buy myself some time to spend with a family because that's
yeah,
important. Like it's just about that really. Like I've only written a couple of chapters so far, which are mostly about how you promote your own release without paying like a PR agency like a grand to do it for you.
definitely,
If
definitely.
there's a grand you can save, that's a grand in your pocket when that release comes out.
Hey, you're going to be the record label's enemy, there, but do you know what? It has to be done. It has to be done because there's a lot
Yeah,
of
share what my experience really, because I do everything myself, and it puts money in my pocket. But also the artists who release on my label, they see a bit of profit from it. And then
definitely,
people might look at some of the stuff that's come out on the label and be like, "Oh, it's only done 10,000 streams on Spotify," but that 10,000 streams on Spotify worked the way that I did it, still meant value and profit for them. Whereas most people, with 10,000 streams, they'll find like the label gets back to them as like, "We're 600 quid in debt because we spent all of this, so you're probably not going to earn enough of that for like 5 years yet."
mate. It sounds like you're onto a winner there because that,
Yeah,
for me, you're not only targeting the musical industry kind of tips and tricks of the trade, but you also tell them how to deal with it from a personal perspective as well. The way to manage your kind of, I know, your lifestyle as well
yeah.
as balancing your music as
I
well.
think it will obviously take a lot longer than writing a dad joke Bible did. I'm just chipping away at it when I find a few hours in the week where I'm like, I ain't got a few meetings in an afternoon or whatever. I'm be like, let me just reopen that up, see where I
Definitely.
got, start chipping away at the next thing. But yeah, I want it to be like a bit like a handbook that also has like almost like notebook type pages in it, where it's like like write something in here about like like get down on paper like 5 artists that you look up to, and like what, compare yourself to that artist, and like what is it about that artist that you like, and
Yeah.
try and paint the picture in people's heads of like where do you've just finding where you think you belong in the marketplace, and like right, if that's where you want to get, based on that, look at this and this, and this is what you should be doing, and that's what you should be doing. If you want to be a pop star, you want to go this route. If you want to be this, then this route's for you. So it's going to be quite a like complicated mess of ideas, but I want it to kind of appeal to any. I don't want it to be a book that only appeals to people who know who I am. Basically, I want it to be like,
The
if you're
masses.
music, it's like whether you're in a band or a producer or a singer, or you want to be a pop star, is like you could pick that book up and be like, well, here's some things that you can do to get started, and like eventually, if you do this well enough, you don't really need to wait around for a major label, unless you do want to be. If you want to be a pop star, probably best signing with a major and
Yeah.
just like, trying to get famous. But if you just want to like maintain, build a fan base, do all of your own promo, look after your own things, know like how to manage, like when's a.
Oh, for some reason the sound's got. Oh, hold on. The sound just went there for a sec. I don't know why. Have you mute? Has it muted? I don't know what's happening there.
No, I don't know. It did say that I was muted, but I didn't
Sorry,
press.
mate. Sorry, apologies. Apologies. Sorry about that.
I'll pick back up where I was saying, but like yeah, basically, if you're an artist, I just wanted to kind of be a bit more broad in that. If you depending on, it's more about like the mindset and some of the things you can do to save yourself money. Like just like a lot of it's about um, like reverse engineering a lot of the processes that you will pay for as an artist or expect to lose a percentage of your royalties for. So things like, what does a manager do? What does a distributor do? Like, why should you get a distributor, or why should you consider a manager, or why not? And like I've always looked after my own. I've never had a manager. I've never had a. I've paid for PR a couple of times, so I know the pros and cons of it. Um, radio plug-in. What's that? Why does that cost money?
mhm.
How do you do it yourself? How do you get in magazines? It's like it's all of that in a little book. So like if you wanted any of that, it's like here's ways to do it yourself without paying hundreds of pounds to someone else to do it. And
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. And I
um,
think the artists of today need that guidance, and I'm not saying that it's not allowed, but I think the artists need to be learning to work smarter for their own benefit, as opposed to just relying on one entity, one company just to do it all for them, when you can do it all by yourself and working smartly and more efficiently.
That's about working smart, definitely. And any hours you can save yourself from being on social media and stuff like that is like little tips, and some of the services I've found online that are like, you can do this and like lose 4 hours off social media every week.
Mental.
Like, yeah.
Mental. Mr. Plastician, I'm going to call you Plastic Man because I've bought your vinyls from 2002, 2003. So for me, you're Plastic Man to me, but for obvious reasons, Mr. Plastician. I just want to say thank you for your words of wisdom and your guidance, mate. You've got a lot of wisdom, man, and I'm glad that we were able to understand and kind of understand your thought process and what keeps you going during these difficult times. I just want to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm looking forward to your next book. More music out for you as well for this year, and yeah, so I want to say wish you all the best to you and your family, and I look forward to speaking to you in due course.
Much appreciated, man. Thanks for having me.